Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Afrobizgermany. My name is Samson Onoja Itodo. I am very, very honored today to have His Excellency, the Ambassador of Nigeria to Germany, Yusuf Tuggar, with us today. Thank you very much, sir, for honoring this our invitation. We appreciate every time you take your time. We know you're a very, very busy person, and you've taken your time to be with us today. I want to say thank you very much, sir, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Samson.
So today, for our audience today, the topic today is the return of the stolen African arts and its importance to Africans. And if you're out here, if you're joining us for the first time, please share, like, and leave your comments. We'll be reading your comments as this interview goes on. Please share this video and let every other person be alerted that we are having this conversation today, because it's very, very vital to the survival of Africans wherever they may be. Sir, without wasting much of your time, I know you're a busy man. Let me go straight to the point. Sir, why have you made it your priority since you came into this country to put up this fight for the return of the diluted Nigerian artworks?
Because it is going to play a very important role in our nation building endeavor for all African countries. As you know, Africa was colonized by European powers, and even before the process of colonization, there was the slave trade, where Black people from Africa were dehumanized, carted away to work on plantations in the Caribbean, in South America, in North America, and other parts of the world. And in order for African countries to develop, there needs to be a change of approach to Africa itself, to Africans. The mentality with which Africa is approached can only be changed when the rest of the world, particularly the Europeans, agree and accept that we're all human beings just like them, and that we had a history before engagement with so-called enlightened outsiders. You cannot change this without first and foremost having them return what was taken forcibly and what was stolen cultural properties, so that, you know, when they come back to where they were taken from, we will be able to interpret the reason for their existence. And also in them, you have a lot of history, because one of the reasons why, you know, they say that Africa did not have any history before engagement with outsiders, particularly Europeans, is because a lot of African communities were not writing in books. But a lot of these stolen cultural properties were a way of storing history and historical events, which have no meaning sitting in European museums, because they won't understand them, no matter how much they try to educate themselves on. The ceremonies, the rituals, if you will, the traditions, and all of that have continued, but without a lot of these stolen cultural properties. So it's an integral part of us understanding ourselves, our heritage, our history, and making us stronger to develop our nations.
So do you think the Europeans, that, because for example, if a mobile phone has no usefulness if it is moved out of its network zone, do you think the Europeans that have kept these artworks know the importance of these things to Africans? Do they value the importance?
Some do, some don't, because you also have to look at what I can only call the ontology of museums, you know, the truth, the actual truth in terms of knowledge for creating museums. A lot of these stolen cultural properties are kept in what they refer to as ethnological museums, And these ethnological museums are tied directly to racist ideologies that you have. The premise to begin with is that Black people or Africans are subhuman, as if we're not, complete. This is how they started, There was eugenics, where they were experimenting on Black people to find out whether they have the same brain as other human beings and all of that. And then when these properties were stolen also, sometimes it was to showcase how primitive Africans are in comparison to others. But then remarkably, what they ended up doing that astonished them was to find out that, some of these cultural pieces, in terms of the processes and the methodology applied to create them, was, they were very advanced, in many instances, much even more advanced than what existed in Europe in the particular time period. So it gives humanity as a whole the opportunity to address the format that these museums exist on, for museums to redefine themselves, because a lot of them, quite frankly, have outlived their purpose, if indeed they even had a purpose to begin with. So we need to redefine the concept of, museums as a whole. And I'm happy that, African countries are taking the lead on this, and this issue, this debate, which is also tied directly to some of the residue of racism that exists out there. You can see the Black Lives Matter movement. You had the George Floyd incident in the US, and so on and so forth. So it's time to address this, and also to readdress the whole issue of colonialism and the racist ideologies that drove colonialism.
I read some time ago in a French magazine or something like that, a newspaper, where somebody was asking if the artworks, if housed in a museum in Africa, will be safe. What would you say to that?
If it would be what? Sorry?
Safe, if it is housed in a museum in Africa.
Whether they would be safe?
Yeah.
Well, I answer a question with a question. Were they safe when they were stolen?
Okay.
Were they not preserved? I believe by the word safe, you mean whether they will be protected in the same way. The people that stole them with guns and ammunition and explosives, in the case of the Benin bronzes, I came and met them in a very good state and found them attractive, which is what even led them to forcibly remove them, to steal them. So, and when you look at a country like Nigeria, and if you look at, let's say, Benin City, where the Benin bronzes were taken from, you cannot compare Benin City of 1897 with Benin City of today. So in terms of, being able to keep them in a good state, and, the places that they're going to be kept and all that, were much more advanced. There was no electricity in most parts of the world back then, So now we have electricity for what is, regardless of whether we have power outages or not. That's besides the point. And then you look at the way and manner some of these cultural pieces are even being kept in the European and North American museums where they reside today. A lot of them are kept in a very bad state, because there's so much of it, they don't want to let go. They store them in basements sometimes that are wet. The weather is cold. They want made, when you make something from certain types of wood that only exists in Africa, and you bring it out here, or certain feathers, the climate is not conducive for them, and you just stash them in some basement. It's wet, it's raining all the time, it's cold, and so on and so forth. they're not in any better state. So that argument, as far as I'm concerned, is redundant. It's the argument put forward by people who want to just come up with excuses.
So through your work, through your hard work, and through your push, through your everything you've tried to do in making the Germans decide to return some of this, they promised to return bad diluted arts in their possession. Have they come true with their promises?
They're working at it, as you have to understand also and appreciate, their own internal processes. First of all, these, in the case of the Benin bronzes that they've agreed to return, they're not held in one place. They're held by several museums across the 16 German states, 16 German landers. And they're not owned, these museums are not owned by one entity. So first of all, there has to be a consensus amongst the museums that has to be coordinated as it is being coordinated by the Minister of State for Culture, for them to agree in unison to return the cultural pieces, the timetable, they're also, they've also embarked on training, for instance, for young Nigerian students, and there's collaboration between the Nigerian Commission for Museums and Monuments and their counterparts here, archaeological societies involved, and so on and so forth. So all of that takes time to coordinate everything and then to effect the return. So we appreciate what Germany is doing, the journey so far. We've made a lot of progress, and we eagerly look forward to a quick return.
Beautiful. Sir, do you think this museum is going to have a lot of pull to cost a lot of tourists to go to Nigeria? Would it have the same effect as it is having in Germany here?
When you say this museum, I don't
know. The
know.
artworks, when housed in Nigeria.
Yeah, because it's not just, it might not necessarily be just one museum. There are quite a number of, I think, museums in Nigeria involved. And to be honest, if you were to return all the stolen Benin bronzes, even if you want to leave it at that, it's a lot. In Germany alone, I believe we have something like 1,500 pieces. Oh. And, I believe the United Kingdom has more, there's several others in other, spread across the European countries, in the US as well, Canada, I believe. So if you were to return all of these pieces, I don't think they would fit into one museum. So this is where I think, sometimes the argument is lost, where they start saying, okay, where are they going to be kept? And, as we speak, a museum, a federal museum is in existence in Benin City. It is there, and we have other museums in other parts of Nigeria. And then there's a proposal by the governor of Edo State to build a new museum that is also ongoing, and with the Oba of Benin as the custodian of, these Benin bronzes, I think there's enough to go around and to accommodate, these pieces when they're returned. But the priority for us is to establish that these pieces are owned by Nigeria, they belong in Nigeria, and they're going to be returned.
Can you give us a reason why this has taken this too long to arrive at this point, and why is it still taking more time? What is making the journey so slow?
Well, I think I described that in part to you when I told you that, first of all, they are held by different entities. And just like Nigeria has 36 federating units, 36 states, Germany has 16 federating units, and the museums are all independent of each other. And then you have an entity that is holding more than even all of the other museums, the Prussian Cultural Heritage Foundation. Some of these entities that we're talking about are not government owned. So it's not just going to be a decision of the German government by fiat to just say, you must return it and then it happens overnight. They have to convince some of these private and quasi-governmental entities and sub-state entities to agree to return, which they have, but they all have their own internal processes, and this takes time.
Can you tell us about the effort ongoing, any ongoing efforts in other countries of the world to return these looted artifacts?
Well, as you know, my area of competence is Germany because this is where I'm serving, but I do know that already in other countries, pieces have been returned. My colleague in the United Kingdom received some of the pieces from Cambridge University and actually physically returned them to Nigeria. And there have been quite a few other returns from different countries, one piece, two piece here, so it's ongoing, and pressure continues to mount on the United Kingdom that holds more of the Benin bronzes than any other country to also return. I know that they domesticated a law to even prevent them from doing so, So these processes take time. Sometimes, there has to be recourse to the country's legislature, because their laws also have to permit the return. But it's no excuse. It is an open and shut case. If we agree and accept that we are living in a world guided by international laws and international best practice, the rule of law, then there should be nothing in the way of countries returning stolen goods. When there's a theft, whether you did the stealing or not, if you bought stolen goods, if you inherited them, if you came about them, it does not change their status of being stolen goods, and they should be returned to the owners.
So do you think we are doing enough in educating the world on the importance and the values of African history and culture? This is the Black History Month. Are we doing enough?
We're not doing enough. I think there's much more to do, because people need to understand. There are a lot of people still that don't know enough about Nigeria, don't know enough about Africa. And the only way they will get to know is if we continue to engage them, if we continue to educate them so that they understand and appreciate that we had a history, we had a very rich one at that. We had civilizations, we had empires, just like other parts of the world. People were creative, our brains work the same way that the human brain works in other places, and in terms of creativity, in terms of knowledge, it has always been domiciled in Africa the same way as it's domiciled in other parts of the world. It would make us appreciate each other as human beings and respect each other as human beings and God's creation.
So the second Nigerian Cultural Day, Germany, which is your idea, you kicked that off when it came to Germany, was supposed to take place last year and we somehow got cancelled. Are there plans for any culture, for the same events this year?
Oh, certainly. We're planning. The problem was we again scheduled it to hold and we had to postpone. It was to be held in Dresden because the state of Saxony wanted to partner with us to hold it in Dresden, along with their Directorate of Museums. Sadly, because of yet another outbreak, I think it was the Omicron at that point, it had to be postponed. So we are, we're deeply saddened that it had to be postponed again, but we're hoping that once the situation ameliorates, we'll still be able to forge ahead and have the cultural day, but it might not necessarily be in Dresden. We're keeping an eye on it closely, monitoring, because you see, having the cultural day would entail having people come from outside of Germany. Some of the pieces, there's a fashion aspect of it, there's a music aspect of it, apart from art, literature, books, and all of that. All of that has to be brought in, properly coordinated, and then we want to ensure that it is well attended. So with COVID restrictions where crowds are not up to a certain level, are not even permitted, and the travel restrictions and so on, it has been very challenging. But definitely we're going to.
So what's the ultimate? What would you say is the ultimate goal of this cultural day? What do you think? What's the ultimate goal?
Is to showcase Nigerian culture, showcase Nigerian art, Nigerian music, Nigerian food, Nigerian literature, Nigerian fashion. This sensitization that you referred to, making them know more about, our history, our culture, our tradition, so that when they appreciate it more, if they become more inquisitive, then certain things become easier. Diplomacy itself becomes easier. It's cultural diplomacy, and there's certain softer aspects of diplomacy that go a long way. Because if you look at Nigerian music, for instance, everywhere you go now in the world, you will hear Davido, you will hear
Nigerian jollof rice. Yes.
Nigerian jollof rice, Nollywood movies, they're on Netflix, they're all over the place. So, but still, there are people, particularly in a country like Germany, that are not aware of all of this.
That's supposed to be my next question. So, this Nigerian movement is really huge around the world. In Germany here, there's a group called the German Afrobeat All-Stars. I don't know if you've heard of them before here. They're really doing good. It's a group of young men into this Afrobeat music, and there are people doing the movie things and other things also. So is there any way you're looking at harnessing this group to work with them? Are you thinking of any way to harness and work with them?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're always open to working with groups, and we try as much as possible to invite Nigerians, Nigerian groups to events. For instance, the Dresden Cultural Day that we organized, that unfortunately didn't hold, we were partnering with Emeka Ogbu, who is a very popular artist and curator residing in Germany, in Berlin. So whenever but we can't, unless something emerges, we can't just say, okay, we are collaborating with you alone also, because we have to be careful so that we're not being accused of favoritism either, because I'm sure there's more than one group in Nigeria. But if they approach us and say, look, here's an idea, this is what we want to do, particularly because it's their field, it's easier for us to work with them. But I'm hoping that something will come up that...
because the Afrobeat All-Stars are really trying to put something together. They approach me sometimes, and I say, okay, well, when everything is right, we'll be at the right time. Anyway, that's by the way. What would you consider to be the main attraction to Nigeria? If tourists wants to come to Nigeria, what would you say is the main attraction?
I think we've spoken about some of these things already. Nollywood, the music industry, Afrobeat, Nigerian culture. So we're not, we shouldn't try and compete as a tourist destination for aesthetic beauty or for wildlife, because if we try to do that, we'll never be able to compete with places like Kenya, East Africa, Tanzania, that have had that industry and the infrastructure that supports it and the experience and knowledge and, you know, the services that go along with that. That is not our strength. We have to look at our comparative advantage. What is our strength? Our strength in music, you can't surpass us there. Our strength in terms of our movie industry, the whole of Africa is watching Nollywood. In fact, almost the whole world now is turning to Nollywood, you know, with the ideas therein. If we're talking about startups, that's another attraction, you know, what is happening in Yaba, you know, and other campuses and startup hubs, you know, across Nigeria, in Abuja, in Port Harcourt, in Kano, in Kaduna, in Ibadan. There is no, you know, we had one of the fastest growing media and entertainment sectors in the world prior to the COVID pandemic. So that's our strength, essentially.
So if you have one word for the world today, you know, this is the Black History Month, what would you say to the world and to those non-known Black people? What would you tell them about the importance of this? Because for me, I think the Black History Month, just confining into 1 month, is just too small to Black history. What would you want to tell the world? What do you want to tell the world now?
What I want to tell the world is to support us in ensuring that our stolen cultural properties are returned. Not just Benin bronzes, Nok terracotta, some of them are over 2,500 years old, stolen, a lot of it stolen after Nigeria's independence. You have Ife bronzes and unique pieces. You have some from Eastern Nigeria, you have some from Nupe land. You know, there's so much that has been looted, and a lot of it is even still being openly traded on the internet. It's time to return those pieces so that our youth, we have a very youthful population that can learn a lot and that can give us a stronger sense of pride and, you know, help in our nation building. So help us achieve that.
Honestly, thank you very much, sir, for giving us your time. This has been a very, very constructive and impactful time, which I want to say thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been speaking with the ambassador of Nigeria to Germany, Ambassador, His Excellency Ambassador Yusuf Maitama Tuggar. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your time. Thank you for giving me your time.
Thank you for having me, Samson. Thanks.